Welcome back to another episode of Cerebral
Woo!
Pundits. Back for another episode. My name is Casey Bluford. I'm your host, joined by my co-host, Avita Miller.
Hey,
Avita, what is going on? How are we doing today?
doing good. Yeah, staying busy slash productive. So yeah, it's been a good day. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I am in Dallas, Texas, and it is January 14th.
Mhm.
And
It's gonna be
just this past
freezing.
this past weekend, it was snowing. We had snow days, being a Californian, residential Californian, um,
Yes,
I don't even know what that is.
that's
so, so,
wild.
so snow days was actually pretty fun. Had grandma and pop out here, got to hang out, and
Aw,
um, yeah, it was definitely very memorable, very peaceful.
sounds
Yeah,
good.
had a good time. Had a good time.
That
What's
sounds
what?
nice. I
What's
forget. I'm
it?
like over here. It's freaking cold. It's Phoenix cold, people. Okay, like I know where I'm from. I'm like it's
The,
not snowing, but like we're getting
the,
freeze warnings, and I'm like, we're gonna tap
the,
out now. Thank you.
define that. What is Phoenix cold?
It's been like low 30s at night. Some parts of the area have been even hitting the 20s. And this is like in the valley. And I say that because like people around here, like if you go up north, it's expected you're gonna see it's more in the mountains, so there's snow all the time and stuff. But like here in the valley, there's usually no snow. It doesn't. I'm like, what the heck happened?
Yo, what's so crazy? Like in the morning when I go to the gym before work, crazy person. I'm,
Mhm.
I'm one of those 4 a.m. gym guys.
Yes.
It is 19 degrees,
Oh,
and I feel like my hands are like frozen.
I'll just be like, it's
Yeah, I just feel, I just feel like I feel like I'm like a baby T Rex, and I'm just
oh
walking around like this.
my god, that's
Any,
wild. Respect for
anyhow,
going gym that early.
oh, thank you. I'm trying to find my joy and passion again in the health and fitness space. So it is
Yes.
definitely a journey. But we're going to talk about, speaking of journeys, we're going to talk about today. But we appreciate you for joining our podcast, Cerebral Pundits. So we are
Mhm.
here to break down game film. So no, we're not talking about the game film from basketball, football, anything like that. We are also actually talking about podcast film. So we are going to break down some other interviews, stories, and any type of material from different podcasts across the YouTube spectrum. So the
Mhm.
same way that we would break down tape in a game, we're going to break down some film, talk about specific topics, scenarios, stories, and whatnot. So we're always here to have a good time, and we appreciate you for joining us, even if you do join us, 5 years from now. So anyway, what are we talking about today? We are going to talk about some money from some of the money experts, and specifically from one Codie Sanchez.
Yeah.
So if you want to give us a brief overview of what we're listening to today.
Yeah. So we say money experts. Obviously, you can get rich or make money doing a million different things. In this respect, it was appealing because obviously we heard recently you've acquired a couple businesses or acquiring them right now. And this has, I think, been a new topic amongst us, but I think others as well of buying businesses, things of that nature. Can you even do this? How do you do it? And so I think hearing from Codie, and then in this respect, she's actually on a podcast, obviously with a couple others, and just kind of hearing their dialogue and advice, things she's been through. It was really insightful to kind of hear from her perspective of how she's gotten to this point and learned what she has.
Yeah, so let's talk about. I guess let's give a brief overview of who Codie is. So Codie is a pioneer. So she's a woman, yeah, Latino woman. And sorry, did I get that right?
With
Gotta make
confidence,
sure I gotta make sure I gotta get my I
woman,
gotta make sure I get my
small businesses.
Yes, I gotta make sure I get my pronouns correctly nowadays.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she is a pioneer as far as not only just buying businesses, but teaching others how to buy businesses and teaches
Mhm.
others to really take ownership of their life, right? So to be full transparency, I am part of her mentorship group, her mastermind group, and I appreciate and value all that she brings to the community.
Mhm.
And we probably could do a whole series or whole season on one specific topic or person, which we probably should note to self at some
That'll
point,
be
maybe
fun.
down the road. Yeah, we
Yeah.
can really just kind of dive into some things.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so she has a background in finance from corporate America, and eventually began to kind of shift to start buying small businesses. That led to one, led to another, which led to
Mhm.
buying multiple and starting a whole company, and just blew up.
Yeah.
So um, So yeah, let's kind of a brief overview of who she is. So she just dropped a new book, Main Street Millionaire, which I still have yet to read. Go figure. But it is part of the book club for 2025, so I think we will get around to it.
Nice.
So,
Oh, good. Mine's in progress.
so real quick before we kind of dive into this, we actually met. Me and you met last year
Yes.
listening to Codie Sanchez, right? At one of her conference. Well, she at a conference, but she spoke at one of the conferences. So,
So he's being
um,
humble. So some of us got to witness her and be in the same room and hear her speak, which honestly was pretty. It was pretty cool.
that's pretty cool.
Very powerful to see people like that. Not just you view them like this on videos, and that's one thing, but just to be there and feel the energy of what they're saying and the passion in it is pretty cool. But Casey actually got to meet her, like, stand next to you, let's have a small talk in a small group, which is even better. So that is an even further experience that he got to have, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and honestly, I shared this with her. That kind of jump started kind of everything for me last year, as far
Yeah.
as kind of proof of concept and proof of like exactly where I need to be. And when I went to show her community had a conference last November, and I actually brought that up, and if she remembers that, and she said, "Yeah, absolutely." So,
That's
um,
awesome.
yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. So,
Yeah.
anyway, let's get into the content, which is what we're
Yeah.
all here to do.
Sure.
Um, so let's talk about it here. So, first note, what is it? Competency kills just about any identity. So let's talk about that for a second, because you wrote that down in your notes, and I was like, this is an interesting concept. So let's
Yeah.
break that down. What do you think from that?
Well, I think contextually, I'm like around that point. So she kind of gave a brief overview of just her, like we did, and just kind of introduced herself. But then kind of sharing this idea that not only was she a woman kind of playing in a man's world, if you will, of finance, but they were kind of talking about what did that look like? Did you notice anything? And I think previous to that, she even mentioned how, and look, as a woman, I respect wanting to work with women and supporting other women 100%. However, I thought it was interesting that she also pointed out that a lot of the promotions or mentors she had along the way were men. And ultimately, there was a smaller pool of women that were in this industry. And she actually referenced what I believe she was saying is like the token effect, where she was saying instead of it being collaborative, she actually had almost a tougher time with the women.
Yeah,
And I
like
thought
a
that was
dog eat dog world type thing.
yeah, that like they were tougher. And I can kind of see that because, there's certain times, I think each in our own rights, you get a little chip on your shoulder. Where you're like,
Misconceptions.
okay, I'm just going to have to fight a little harder. But that was kind of what she was talking about previously. And then as she was going through these stories of what she went through, she just said this line where she was like, well, ultimately, she's like, I never looked at this as a downfall. She's like, I never looked at it as like, oh, but I'm a woman in this game. Oh, well, I'm Latina, so probably going to be harder. And at one point, she says, competency kills just about any identity. Of basically, like, you know what you're doing and you're in your lane, like, doesn't matter. I don't know. It
Yeah,
just stood out to me. And
yeah. No, I really like that, because I feel like that could be looked at in so many different aspects, right? So that could be looked at in a sense of obviously like identifying yourself as a man in a woman space, or a woman in a man space, or whatever that looks like. But just in business in general, like so I was taught at a young age, and before we kind of get into some things, I was taught at a young age that you can't play the game if you don't know the language, and they keep you out when you don't know the language.
yes.
So, once I started to kind of get into the space of like buying businesses, the first thing I need to do was understand all of the language. I needed to understand like the vocabulary, the terminology, um, because if I know how to play the game, if I know the rules of the game, then there's no way you can kick me out the game.
Yes.
So I loved this quote, because I felt like it was kind of very much in line with that,
Yeah.
very much.
I
So
like it.
let's talk about misconceptions, because I think that in today's society, we won't get into too many, but like they talk about it, there's so many opportunities to make money right now.
Yeah.
And I think the misconception is that like you're going to start a business and you're going to be profitable right away.
Yeah.
And you're going to live this life making $10,000 a month. You're going to travel to Europe and live on the beach and still do your business. I feel like that's such a misconception, but that's just one of them. There's so many misconceptions. So let's play a little clip from the video to where they talk about some of the misconceptions that are discussed.
people have about money that hold them back?
The first thing I wish I knew when I was young about money is that other people who have it are no smarter than you on average. They don't have, famous or rich family members. 80% of all millionaires are actually self-made in the US. 79% of all millionaires are self-made in the US. It's not gifted to them. You don't have to get permission to get it. But instead, what do they really have? They've taken more risk than you have. They've moved faster than you have. They've probably failed a little bit more frequently, and they've surrounded themselves with other people who have the things that they want. And I wish I knew that when I was younger, because I used to think that you had to be really smart. You had to have really big ideas in order to make a lot of money. And I don't think that's true at all. It's move fast, take a lot of risk, learn from that risk continuously.
Do you have any other controversial takes about money?
The most controversial take about money these days is that it's actually good if you have it. And that it doesn't mean that, you're bad from being rich and somebody else is good from not being rich. There's no virtue signal to poverty. In fact, it's the opposite. If you have a lot of money, typically what does that mean? It means that you've provided a ton of value in the world. I've met a lot of billionaires I don't like, but I haven't met a single billionaire that made their own money that hasn't provided 10x the value to the world that they actually have in their bank account. And so I think these days we get told by a lot of people that money's bad and you shouldn't want it. Money is the root of all evil. We almost say it like we're programmed. And I think we have to go back into our programming and ask ourselves, why would we be told from such a young age that money is the root of all evil? When actually it's a biblical saying, that's from the Bible. Money is the root of all evil, but it's out of context because it's actually the desire for money is the root of all evil.
So, to clear that up, it actually says the love of money is the root of all evil, but we won't get into that too much. But literally grew up with that quote in mind because I used to always think about money all the time.
Yes.
And my mom used to always tell me the love of money is the root of all evil. I think she just used to say that just to kind of help me change thoughts. But
that's funny.
Let's hit on that because I feel like she brought up a couple really good points in that. So number one, speed kills deals. So this is something that she definitely stresses in her community. This is something that I've read multiple different times. I think very, very often, and not just in buying businesses, but just in general, we can get in our head a whole lot more than we think, right? We can have what's analysis by paralysis per se. But when she talks about taking risk and she talks about speed and deals, like that is 100% true. I've missed a couple deals because I took too long to reach back out or follow up or push forward. But at the same time, I've been close to closing so many other deals because I was able to take action. And I think that step alone will help you go so much further than you realize. Just taking action and just knowing that speed is ultimately the ultimate lever that you can pull, even if you don't have all the skills, knowledge, and tangible things like other people have.
Yeah. No, I would 100% agree with that. I think you're right. I've heard that kind of across the board. It seems like from numerous successful people as well. And that seems to be key of like, whatever you're going to do, decide, commit, and then move on. It's like either it's going to work or it's not. Now, keep going. But the rest of us, I think the people that are kind of always chasing it or it seems too distant are the ones that, like you said, either we don't see how it can happen. We're still thinking about it. It's that idea, right? Everybody's chasing that like far off dream. One day I'll take that class. One day I'll buy the house. One day, and it's just like, that's how we end up, 10, 20, 50 years down the line with the same, like, yeah, maybe one day it'd be nice. And it's like, well, when are we going to start this? Like, when does this get going exactly? Versus to that point, I feel like you hear some of these folks and you think, you were talking about earlier, we think that you just start a business and it's right away successful. And I think it's way more common than not that a lot of the big companies or names that we see, quite frequently, they've had numerous failed businesses or things like that nature or failures, regardless of how you want to look at that. Things that were not as known, we'll say, as what you know them for. Now you see a big name or company and you're like, holy cow. But you don't think about, the 20 years of every other business they started or tried or whatever, lost money on. We kind of skim over that part.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it's she mentioned something that I don't think was on this video, but she said power hates pushback.
No, she said that on this one.
Was it on this one? Okay, maybe I
Yeah.
missed that.
Yeah.
But I like that because that ties into some of the other notes when we talk about it might have been previous where she talked about her being pushed out of her previous company and how that ultimately changed her life in the
Yes.
sense of she wanted to go one way, previous boss wanted to go another way.
Mhm.
Ultimately, like when he said, "This is my ship, and if you want your own ship, go buy your own ship," in a sense, right?
Yeah.
So, but that was almost the jump start to where she is now.
Yeah.
But for one, there's two crazy things about it. Her suggestion was to take everything online, and just
Isn't
think
that
like
crazy?
that is crazy to think about. Like, oh, let's go online. No, we don't need to go online. What? Like what? Like nowadays, everything literally is online,
I
right?
was thinking that too when she mentioned it, and it's was like, and again, everything, hindsight 2020. I'm sure the guy's like, what in the world? But it probably just
Yeah.
wasn't meant to be, anyways, and that's okay. But it is wild to your point, hearing it now, and especially in recent times, like not only has the internet become popular, but just, you know, everything else that's transpired in life to make it to where literally it's not just an option. It seems basically mandatory. So many people's jobs are remote now, or you do everything online that like, I mean, how many times now you're like, I just want to talk to a freaking person.
Yo,
Like,
seriously, like stop.
you
Zero, zero, zero,
right?
zero, zero.
Speak to a representative. Like,
Yes.
it's so
Yeah.
crazy to hear that was how she was thinking in that time. And that like that was the pushback, because I feel like when you hear pushback, I think sometimes maybe the connotation be like, oh, well, was she not, following the orders of her job or fulfilling, demands of that or whatever. I feel like we think like, oh, there must be something wrong. And it's like,
Hmm.
no, pushback. It's just that it was just resistance and that they were not looking to do this. And she was like, this is silly. Why are we even wasting our time with this? This is where it's headed. Let's just go do the thing. Like, why are we
Yep.
taking these detours over here?
And it just goes to show, and obviously, we're hearing the story from one side, so that
Oh
there's
yeah.
a whole other side. But it just kind of goes to show like how you can grow successful in certain aspects and then become very stale,
Yeah.
right? And it's important to make sure that you do put people in your circle that help you continuously evolve and grow and grow.
Yeah.
But let's talk about something. Let's talk about the idea of business just in general. So let's kind of backtrack for a
Mhm.
second. In this interview, she talks about it's easier than ever now to start a business,
Yeah.
but it's harder now to ever be profitable. And I love that section because I equate it to, I always joke, I equate it to like television
Hmm.
and or just streaming or just content in general.
Okay.
There's so much content now, right? So
Mhm.
like if someone wanted, they can spend 8 hours a day and listen to all of our podcasts. They can spend 8 hours a day listen to Netflix
Yeah.
or watch a marathon of Harry Potter, right? There's so much content out there, but
Mhm.
everything's not good,
Yeah.
right? And that's going to the viewer, so to speak, is the one to kind of ultimately make that decision. But
Yeah.
I think in a society that is very distraction heavy,
Mhm.
it's even that much more important to really ensure that there's quality over quantity per se.
Yeah. Well, I think another side of that too, when she was discussing it, was the comparison of generations.
Hmm.
'Cause I think that was a great perspective that she shared, and that, you know, you have a younger generation that, to be fair, they're probably the ones not profiting as much. And maybe it's,
Hmm.
some of it could be a variety of things causing that as a whole.
Hmm.
But then you've got, they're kind of looking at these boomers or what have you, the older generations, and like they need to get with the times. We're talking about things online and stuff like that. And I'm sure there's many times where they're like, why is this not being automated? Why are we manually still
Hmm.
doing this? So you could easily kind of criticize that. But then you have these boomers that, have had these businesses. You figure if you're talking to them and they're still running this business, there's a half decent chance they're actually profiting from it. So
Yeah,
I liked her idea of like, if both would kind of just put their pride aside for a moment, they could probably help each other out, and we could
absolutely.
actually make a change overall, but instead people kind of, take their stance, and it's like, no, or you're wrong, I'm right, there's
We
no
got we got too many TikTok millennials and we got too many Clint Eastwoods to get off my lawn. So we got to bring them both. Yeah, we got to bring them both together.
yeah.
let's move to the next step. Let's talk about the idea of being unemployable. So this is one of my favorite sections because the
Yes.
more and more I work my job, the more and more I'm like, is this me?
I, struggled in when I was in a corporate setting was like, it was mostly my fault. Like I'm kind of unemployable. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are like, we're super obstinate. I wanted things my way. I was super aggressive. I thought we weren't moving fast enough. And like, I remember one mentor who now is a friend of mine, but back then I was really mad at him, was the CEO of a company that I was running a big division for. And I thought we should use the internet. Like I was like, here's my idea. I think that in the future, we will sell investment products entirely online. You won't go to steak dinners. You won't meet with people face to face. We could do literally all of this remote. And that was kind of crazy like 10 years ago. And he said, it's never going to happen. We don't want to run the business that way. And he basically got so annoyed with me that eventually he was like, listen, you want to go left. I want to go right. It's my boat. Like if you're going to be on my boat, then you need to row the same direction that I am. And so I kind of got pushed out. I left the company, and he did me a huge favor because if he hadn't done that to me, I probably
No.
would have stayed there forever.
Being in a
Yeah. So back to like our Bolt story, but that concept of being unemployable, that's literally something I have to be mindful of every day.
Yes.
Because obviously the job that we're doing now, we've had these conversations like
Mhm.
first and foremost, like we're not all in a situation to where we can just 100% go out, bet on ourselves with no money and do blah, blah, blah. Like you
Yeah.
have to take care of home court first. So you have to almost compartmentalize certain aspects of your day, your job to make sure that you protect your, get your income, yada, yada, yada. So, because I'm not a huge proponent of just going out on the limb, 100% entrepreneurial, just start from ground zero. Like
Yeah.
I'm not to say people that don't do that. I'm just not a huge proponent of that. And now I have dependents, so that makes it even a little bit more challenging.
Right.
But I think you can scale faster when you're already employed. So, but yeah, I thought that was funny because I'm like, you know what, this is literally what I go through every day. Like, am I unemployable? Like, am I becoming more and more unemployable? So
I definitely thought twice on it when she said that, and I was like thinking back where I'm like, am I unemployable? Because on the one hand, I think I've always been a good employee in the sense of like I'm reliable. I'm gonna try hard, when I'm there. But the other side of that is a little bit like, yeah, I've definitely had some moments where I'm like, why are we not just doing this? I don't understand. Like, we're doing the same dang thing. What's happening here? Like, let's change it, or like, well, we're going to be stuck here for the next 10 years then, or when she said he did me a favor, I think about that. And so I think I've told you this, but I've had 2 places close down on me in the last few years. So out of my control. So again, it was not necessarily like I wasn't fired for, misbehaving or doing anything wrong or not doing my job or anything like that. But 2 times that's happened. And both times I feel like have pushed me towards where I am today. Because to her point, when she said, if that hadn't have happened, I'd probably still be there. Never before this, it would have never. And I think about that and I'm like, well, whether I'm unemployable or not, who knows, up for debate. But I think about it when she said that, especially right now as I'm reliving, I'm like, I think that did me a favor because I always had these bigger ideas of like, we should be doing more. We should, how are these other people? Like you said, you got to learn the game. And it's like, but how do you learn the game? Because it seems so far. And you're like, how do you start meeting these people? How do you, get in this spot? How do you start investing or whatever, crazy idea you have for a business? And then you just end up stuck on the hamster wheel, where you're around the same people, same job. And next thing you know, you blink and you've been there 5 years.
Yeah.
Whereas that made me kind of look and I'm like, all of a sudden the next job I took, it closed down as well, but it was the same thing. I probably should have left 6 months or a year before and I didn't. I was like, well, let me test this out first. Well, let me, and then you go to the next one, all of a sudden it was a little more intentional. And then guess what? When I made that move is when I was like, nah, let's try something different. We can go back to that whenever. So anyways, just interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, here's the thing. You can't know the game if you're not in the arena. So one of my favorite things are The Man in the Arena, Teddy Roosevelt. Like if you haven't read it, listen to it. Like
yeah,
short, sweet, concise, but yeah, you can't know the game without being in the arena. So
yeah.
no, good stuff though. Good stuff. So we didn't preface this, but this is going to be a 2-part episode. and I'll say it again at the end. This interview was, about 90 minutes long, so we didn't have the time to necessarily go. We don't want to make the time to go through all of it in this one episode. So let's hit on a couple more things real fast, starting with risk tolerance. And this is one that I actually was just talking to some coworkers about today.
Mm.
Not mindset is part of it, but your risk tolerance is another thing. So in
Mm.
order for you to be comfortable and capable and able to make that deal and to make that decision, you have to increase your risk tolerance. And it's okay to start slow. And the thing about this is she talked about, like, what you heard before, like, people sometimes you need to start small.
Yes.
Sometimes you need to boost that confidence. And then other times there's others who just jump straight in and have no clue that the water is 5 degrees. So let's listen to a little snippet real quick where she talks about risk tolerance.
Our businesses too. Like, we might start a small Etsy store on the side, but we're never going to take a big risk with a business in the same degree that, the generation right before us did. And so I kind of want to push back on something that young people seem to think is a good idea today, which is like playing the super safe route. It looks like on average, wages don't beat inflation. We have wage stagnation of 3 to 4% per year. We have inflation rates double that in some specific instances, and depending on how you measure it. So if you don't take more risk, you stay with your job, you lose money year over year. And so I think we have to take more risk today in our generation. And that is not something that I was taught. And I don't know if you disagree with me on that one way or the other, but I think it's risk that makes you money, not save that makes you money.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that one, Anvita?
I was gonna ask you the same.
Okay,
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm like, either way. I agree with her. I think when I hear it broken down, I think that's the reality. I think whether you want to believe it or not, that's just the case. If inflation is happening regardless of what you decide to do or not do. And I also think when you have, as a whole in society, we're in a space where I feel like everybody is pushing for better, right? Personal growth in their business, on themselves, and we're learning and making a conscious effort to hone in on our skills. Like we're saying, we're looking at, how do we do business better? Do I have a low risk tolerance? Okay, how do I practice this? Do I start smaller and build on it? But I think people that are, maybe that middle class or just used to that 9 to 5 lifestyle, like, you're going to sit in that, and odds are they going to be asking for a raise? Are they going to go switch jobs? Maybe some, but as a whole, probably most are just going to kind of stay and take, the every year or two, the 5-cent raise you get or whatever. I'm exaggerating, but I think, if you look at that, I mean, I don't think she's wrong that you're going to have to, you're taking a risk at some point. Either we're going to take the risks now, or we're going to take risks on the back end that when we retire and stuff, is this going to withhold, or are we going to feel it at that time?
I mean, it all boils down to how comfortable are you getting uncomfortable. You have to get out your comfort zone. At some point, you're either going to be forced out or you're going to do it on your own. When you're forced out, maybe you're a little bit older. Maybe you're not as prepared.
Yeah.
Right. If you're doing it now, maybe you have more time to kind of prepare for it. So that, to me, that's what it boils down to. Like, how comfortable are you getting out of that? Because you're not going to be able to move forward in your comfort zone as long as you think. It's always going to take longer than it thinks, and always going to be shorter than you think. So
absolutely.
I want to play one more section. This one might go a little bit longer.
Sure.
Eviscerated an industry, had to have the whole insurance industry redo how they price things, and also had to redo the whole pension industry because they have mandated risk levels. And so I think until you have had the government reach into your pocketbook and pull the whole thing out, you cannot understand real risk, because you've probably played at a level that's not that big yet. But industry, there's really 2 risks you have to be super careful about in business. When you're young and starting, it's execution risk. And eventually it's what's called asymmetric risk. Where is there a risk so big that it can put you out of business with one stroke, regardless of how good you are? Most entrepreneurs, if they've never built a multi-billion-dollar business, they don't know how to think about asymmetric risk. But that's all over the place. I mean, we don't have it right now on YouTube, but we theoretically could. Like media back in the day was governed by an agency that could put Graham Steffens out of business if you did something inappropriate on the air. You would have the government say, you can't do that again. Your business is done. I don't care how many views you have. I don't care what you're doing. This is public broadcasting, and you can't actually do that. And so I disagree with Alex in that vein. I think for most normal people, the president cannot make you richer, but it can certainly hurt you.
So just to be clear, they asked her about, a Trump economy and all that comes to it. Can a president mess with your business? I forgot exactly what it was. Can a president like ruin your business?
Yeah. I think it was the shift too. Like, do you see that having any impact on the economy?
Yeah.
Do you have any insights or thoughts on this?
So when she talks about asymmetric risk,
Mm-hmm.
in full picture, she's talking about, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, asymmetric risk. But asymmetric risks occur in our W-2 lives as well. So if you really think about it, we're not as secure as we think. And I think that's where the importance of like acquiring skills, acquiring knowledge, because those are going to be transferable.
Yeah.
But in our W-2 lives, if budgets get cut, who's the first to go? Right? Who's on the front line, right? If the business is shutting down, or if they want to go a different route, or they want to switch up your teams, like
you're at their mercy.
You're always going to be at their mercy. And if you don't develop something for yourself, you're always going to be at the mercy. You're always going to be at the bottom barrel of someone else's opinions of you. And that was one of the decisions that I decided a couple years back that I no longer wanted to do. And while I'm still, in the W-2 space now, like everything is moving towards putting myself in a position to where like I no longer have to deal with that.
Yeah. I think that's wise. And I think too, just having that awareness, right? Of like, you can't prevent everything, but you even just knowing like, this is helping me build skills, or, the money from this is lending itself to allow me to do these things, or, having that awareness that like, essentially, as much as we all want to think we're, valuable and irreplaceable, like the fact is when you're in someone else's company, like everyone's disposable. It sounds really harsh. I'm probably like the nice person, but like even I know that, like you can be friends with people, but when they say like it's just business, I feel like that's business, and recognizing the fact that, there's nothing wrong with that. Like you said, absolutely. People can have a great impact and jobs in W-2s. Like entrepreneurship it's not the only way. It is a way. It's not for everybody. So there's nothing wrong with it. But I think the more you recognize it, the more you get to leverage it for you, instead of you feeling like, I need this job. You start looking at it and go, which jobs do I want? Which ones will work for me? That kind of respect.
Absolutely. Let's move to this one.
And you want to doing things you
Sorry, we're talking about hustle culture, right? And we're going to get into this a little bit more right after this.
Don't want to do. You can either delay pain, or you can front load it. And I think when you're young, you have a really high ability to tolerate pain. You can tolerate work pain, both acute, so like in an instant, gosh, this is really hard, I don't know how to do this thing, and endurance pain. I'm doing this for a long time. It really sucks. It's super monotonous. I hate what I do every single day. You can tolerate with that when you're young. You know what really sucks? When you have to do that when you're 50. And so I do think hustle culture for all life is not necessary, but I would rather I err on the side of telling somebody, hey, it's going to suck when you're young. You're not going to like your job. You're going to wake up each morning and think, I went to university for this for a period. And if you expect that, but you keep learning and growing and earning more, it'll be worth it. The only thing that I don't agree with some of the whole hustle porn stuff is that you have to sleep on a couch and go all in and go after one thing when you're young. I don't actually think you should do that. You don't know how to recognize your one thing yet. Like, how are you going to be able to determine, is this a really good game or not, when you don't have enough at-bats? Like, you don't even know what sports you're good at yet. So I think it's perfectly okay to diversify your risk when you're young and not to focus on the one thing. Once you're a stud and you know what you're doing and you've already proven yourself, go hard when you find the thing that you are uniquely skilled to do.
Dropping gems, dropping some good gems.
So
I know we just kind of talked about this a little bit before, but again, front loading that pain, that endurance.
yeah,
You know, truth be told, that's the season that I feel like I'm kind of in now and trying to work myself out of. And
yeah,
but I know there is the light. Like you can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's one of those situations to where like sometimes you just have to endure, and that was part of my 2024 kind of moving to 2025 was just endurance. And I think sometimes like you can make all the excuses in the world. I could try this, that. Sometimes you just got to put your head down and just keep going.
yes.
I think that's just part of it. So I'm all for a whole hustle culture for a short period of time.
So I think it's a season, right? Like I
Yeah.
think
Here's the thing: if it's longer than a season, it's not a hustle anymore. It's a habit.
yes. That's why I'm like, I think what she's saying is valid and why she said you're doing it too, because she also said hustle and like I thought it was key when she was like, basically to me, I saw it as keep moving forward.
Mhm.
Know it's hard, but be earning more, learning more, doing more. And I think that's what's key too, is like, are you hustling for the sake of it because you feel like you should, or because you see other people doing it? Like, is there no end in sight? Like, do you enjoy the job you do? And I think taking inventory of that too, of like, you could put the same amount of effort or hustle, if you will, into something, but like, if you haven't, like we were talking about raises earlier, if you haven't seen a raise in a couple years, well, then maybe we pivot to another company. We're still hustling, but now we're seeing some growth in some respect, like I think that's key too, that you're not just, it's not that idea of like, just work more. Well,
Yeah.
no, like it can suck, but at least like what she's talking about, to me, the hustle is for something. You're
Right.
learning, it's tough, but you're learning the skill. It's tough, but you are getting paid stupid money for it. It's tough, but that, like school, she used it as like, it might not work, but like, doctors hustle because they know down the road it's going to pay off. They don't
Mhm.
like school, but they know it's a necessary evil to do the thing they want to do. And so I feel like kind of checking in on that too, of like, why am I working so hard right now? Why is this tough?
Yeah. I think that's usually when most people kind of throw in the towel, right?
Yeah.
So I was on a call earlier today and was breaking some stuff down, and halfway through I could see her eyes kind of getting big, and she was like, it's a lot." Absolutely. It is a
Yes.
lot.
It's like,
Do you want this or not, right? Like that's you got to decide like
yeah.
how much are you willing to put in? How far are you willing to go?
Yeah.
How far it's I mean, we just bought this business, took over the business, and 3 weeks in we're like, "Oh, snap. Do we still even want this?" Right? So like we
Being
have to
returned.
yeah, like it's like 30-day policy on this return.
Oh
So
my gosh.
um but yeah, no, that's just part of it, and I like that she talks about that, and it's okay to be able to do it for a season as long as it doesn't become a habit. So
Yes.
um
Absolutely.
let me see. I think we will go one more video where she talks about um selling businesses to individuals, and then that probably will be our pause for this one.
Yep. I
So
think that
let's
will
see.
cap it for today.
Let's see.
To put it on the market and
Mhm.
get like a really high multiple? Why would they sell it to an individual at that point?
It's supply and demand. We don't have that many people who know how to buy businesses, and thus they don't have a lot of buyers. So one, buyers and sellers both don't know how to buy businesses. I mean, think about it for you guys. Before some of us started talking about this on the internet, I mean, I was in finance, you were in finance. Like, I didn't know that I just personally could go buy a business. That just sounds kind of like elitist and like I need to have millions of dollars to do it. And it also makes me think, why would somebody sell me a small business that's profitable today? Why wouldn't they run it forever? And the first thing I always tell people, and like you guys are a perfect example, you guys own a few businesses. Is there any point in time where if I said to you, hey, can I buy your business at the right price and the right terms? Would you guys say no? You'd be like, of course, there's a price and there are terms to buy my business. Every single small business owner has the right price and the right terms and what I call the wrong Tuesday. Like you get a business owner on the line on a day that they don't want to run their business anymore, you've got a business.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that because everything's for sale, right? Everything's for sale. There's like literally everything's for sale.
I
Like
like
you come with me,
on
you come
Tuesday.
with me yeah, you come with me with the right price. I might have an OnlyFans tomorrow. I'm
Oh my
just saying, like, so
We're
so
out. We're done.
everything everything has a right price, and if you do catch them on the wrong Tuesday, because we know
Yeah.
it goes up on a Tuesday, right? So we know that, but it's one of those like, I love that analogy because I felt like it was so real in a sense of like, yeah,
Yes.
like there's times when you, as a business owner, you're just like, I just, you talk to them, I just can't, I'm tired, right?
Yeah.
Then they get paid, they're excited, they're all good, but you catch them on the wrong Tuesday or going into a crappy weekend, then
Take
it's like,
it.
yeah, yes, take it for free. So,
Yeah.
what were
I
your thoughts on that?
I agree. I think, you're a little bit further along that journey than I am. But I could still respect it. Like when she said the analogy of like the wrong Tuesday, and I was like, oh, I could see that. I'm like, now that makes sense. Cause like you said, when things are good, they're like, again, right price, right terms. All of a sudden that's gonna be higher. Everything's gonna be like, I'm not in a rush. Things are great. It'll
Mhm.
cost you on a bad day, you're like, I mean, what are you offering? Like it out, and I
Yeah.
think of that too, like the right price. I mean, over here in Arizona, I just found out there was someone that I guess just sold their house. I was talking just amongst some friends or whatever, and it was like, oh, why did they sell? And they're like, no, they weren't planning to. And I was like,
Mhm.
what happened? And sure enough, apparently, and this is hearsay, so I don't know. Don't be trolling people. But there's a huge chip plant going in out here. And I mean, this thing is massive. Like, just what you can see is huge, but there's, I guess, underground levels and stuff. It's crazy. But I guess to incentivize people to work out here, take certain roles, they're offering them whatever it was,
Mhm.
$600,000 for a home to live. And so they got this offer on their house and they were like, okay, out we go.
Yeah. Hey, pack it up. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those like
I
you
say
look
that
at the check, you're like, oh yeah, we're
right.
out.
Yeah, we're done. Pack it up. Just keep
Yeah.
it. But I
We
think
moved.
it's interesting too, because she mentions in this too, I'll wrap it up, but with that same idea, she talks briefly about Japan offering incentives. And if we will ever hit a point that we start to offer maybe tax incentives or stipends or different things that stipends is probably not the right word, but different opportunities to kind of push people to want to buy businesses and to kind of push that along. And it's funny she brought that up because I actually just had a friend bring that up to me the other day where they had talked to some people that knew somebody in Japan, things like that. And they were like, and it sounded crazy when I heard it, where they were like, no, we've got these investors, like they have to spend a certain amount on investments. So they're looking to buy. And I'm like, this just sounds wild. And then hearing somebody, that's been in the game as long as she has, or to me with that status, say the similar thing or the same thing, I'm like, how is this going to shift things? And it just makes it
Yeah.
crazy, like we said, to know that you or I can just go buy a business. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really cool.
It really is game changing, and it's like having kind of been in the space now for a little bit of time and being started now, like it really is so rewarding, right? And I think that like now it's time to start to try to get see the fruits of your labor, right? All the hours and tears that you put into this and all that. So
Yeah.
but yeah, so I think we're going to pause there. So we are going to call halftime on this pod, and we're going
Yes.
to pick this back up next episode. But yeah, for those that were able to eventually watch this one, because we don't have anyone live with us right now up top, but those eventually that does check this out. We appreciate you taking the time. We hope you got some value from this, some good conversation, and we
Absolutely.
look forward to speaking with you next time.
Absolutely. We'll see you for part 2.
Part 2 later.